There is a power that is used typically within leadership. This is called coercive power. So what is this power? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Alternative method? And lastly, what are the legal limits when using this power? Coercive power is defined as the use of force to get an employee to follow an instruction or order, and where power comes from one's ability to punish the employee for noncompliance. This power is in use, for an example, when an employee carries out an order under fear of demotion or even suspension. In effect, they are forced to perform the task. The most important concept to understand about coercive power is that it uses the application of force. One example of where coercive power has been used in history was when in 2015, George John of Penn State University conducted a study on Hitler and his ability to use power and influence for control. After gaining a vast number of followers, Hitler used his coercive power to keep people in line wherever his motives or actions were questioned. Anyone who questioned him or disobeyed his orders were punished. The punishment depended on the circumstances. It could be either imprisoned in several hundred camps, the gas chamber, or even beheaded. He could not be a more perfect example of how coercive power and influence creates a leader. Another example might be if you're a manager of a sales department and one of your salespeople fails to make the required number of sale calls each day. You could tell that person that he will be demoted if he doesn't meet the standards within a week. It's important to remember that coercive power isn't all just making threats. It's about forcing wayward employees to comply with the protocols and rules that they have established for your business. Next, I will explain the advantages and disadvantages of using such power. One advantage is that it gives managers and supervisors control over the way an organization operates. Insubordination would be if an employee is constantly late or taking longer than allowed lunch breaks, and in this case, then coercive power could be used to force the employee back into line. They can be threatened with removal of bonus or even immediate dismissal for the employee to obey. Another advantage would be when a company is facing a major shutdown. It is natural for some team members to be resistant to change, but in a turnaround situation, the threat of job losses can be a useful tool in getting employees to commit to a new way of working. Though there are some advantages to coercive power, there is also disadvantages. One would be it lowers job satisfaction because people resent it being used on them as they feel they're under a microscope. It can also create the threat of a backlash when used. Employees may eventually retaliate or seek alternative employment. High employee turnover is very expensive to an organization. It obviously doesn't work if you're not allowed to follow through on the threats issued. Now I will talk about a more positive alternative method that can be used in place of negative coercive power. That power is called reward power. It has the potential to impact and influence others based on control over the distribution of rewards or desired resources. When someone is awarded or might receive a potential reward, such as through recognition, pay increases, bonuses, promotions, more responsibility, or additional resources to complete a job, the employee may respond by carrying through with orders, requests, and direction. Despite how coercive power could have an incredibly short-lived effect, it should appear obvious that a reward power is far more likely to generate a greater result with far less observation and control. Lastly, I will discuss the legal limits of coercive power. Although coercive power can be beneficial, it's important to understand that there are laws in place that regulate how to treat your employees. Title VII of the Civil Act of 1964 prohibits any type of harassment or offensive conduct at the workplace, meaning that is based on race, color, religion, sex, natural origin, age, 40 or over, disability, or genetic information. This type of harassment or behavior may be intimidating, hostile, or hostile to reasonable people, and would include jokes that are offensive, name-calling, assaults, threats, intimidation, ridicule, insults, or mockery. You need to ensure standards and policies are adhered to so there is no significant risk involved should you decide to use such power. You also have the right to refuse an impossible request without punishable action being taken, and you can also agree to requests but on your own terms. For example, taking on additional responsibility but stating that you need more time or money to complete the task. In addition, you can also directly request information you feel is being deliberately withheld as a manipulation tool. In closing, you now know what coercive power is, how it has been used, advantages, disadvantages, alternative power, and laws to regulate such power. It only works in small doses, and it's not a business as usual way of exercising power.